What's happening, guys? TechSource back at it again with another PC build on the channel. This one actually has been highly requested. A lot of you have been wanting to see a $1,000 budget PC build, and well, I kind of got one for you. Before we begin, I want to give a huge thanks to Linode for sponsoring this video. Linode provides virtual servers that make it easy and affordable to host anything in the cloud. If you're into gaming, for example, then you can host your own game server with Linode's one-click apps. You can easily set up Minecraft, CSGO, and other game servers to play with your friends online. If you need a VPN, Linode still has you covered. You can run one on your own Linode server to secure your connection and protect yourself on the internet. And if you need some power, you can use Linode's access to GPU and CPU servers, which are perfect for machine learning and CPU-intensive workloads. Linode makes Linux cloud computing simple, affordable, and accessible. And now my subscribers can get $100 in credit on new Linode accounts. Try it out for yourself by clicking the link down below. So this one's going to be a little under $1,100, and that's because I didn't want to cheap out on some of the parts. If I went with the Gigabyte board and a cheaper case, I would have kept the price closer to $1,000. But I didn't feel comfortable using cheaper parts just to hit that $1,000 threshold, so I opted to spend a little bit more for quality parts in order to future-proof this build. So starting with the CPU, we are going with the Ryzen 5 3600. No surprise here. It is still the value king at the moment, at least until Zen 3 gets released. But even then, the Ryzen 5 5600X is going to cost $100 more, which won't bring you any huge performance gains strictly for gaming. This is why the Ryzen 5 3600 is still the best option currently. Either way, this build is going to be future-proof since we're using a B550 board, which does support AMD's new Zen 3 processors, so the option is definitely there if you want to upgrade later down the line. I do want to make it clear that the new Zen 3 processors will still work on X470 and B450 motherboards after you flash the BIOS beginning of January 2021. So you don't need to upgrade your board if you don't want to. I decided to go with the B550 to take advantage of the extra features like PCI Gen 4 support and PCI 3.0 general purpose lanes. Number two, you don't want to buy the Ryzen 5 5600X. You want to buy the Ryzen 5 5600 Non-X, which is rumored to be released in January 2021. The Non-X version is going to go for around $220. That is a much better deal because you're not only getting a faster processor, but it's only going to cost $20 more than the current 3600. AMD did the exact same thing for the Ryzen 5 3600X. They released the X version first so that people can get hyped and buy it, and then later they released the Non-X version, which has a slightly lower base and boost clock, but at a much lower price, making it the most popular budget CPU in the market today. So if you have the patience for it, do not buy the Ryzen 5 5600X at $300, you guys. If you can get it cheaper around Black Friday or Christmas, go for it, but if you can wait, I'd rather go with the Non-X version. Once that CPU hits the market, it's going to be the most popular processor that everyone's going to be buying. Just wait and see. The reason why I chose the ASRock B550 Gaming Phantom is because it's the best B550 board within the price. For $115, you get some VRM heatsinks and an 8 power phase design that will help towards a better and more stable overclock. It also comes with 4 DIMM slots that supports up to 4733 MHz. We also got 2 M.2 slots. One of them is for M.2 storage devices, while the other smaller one supports wireless AC. You can pick up a wireless network adapter for as low as $14 on Amazon and install it on your motherboard to get Wi-Fi access. On top of that, you get 6 fan headers to plug in 6 fans, including your CPU cooler, and 2 RGB headers. You get both a 3-pin 5-volt header and a 4-pin 12-volt header, so it has all your RGB needs covered. You are not going to find another ATX B550 board with all of these features for $115. I'm actually surprised that they're able to sell it at this price point. It's not the prettiest motherboard out there, but you know, for the value and the features it offers, it is pretty tough to beat. Moving on to memory. So I went with the Team Group T-Force Vulcans. This is a 16GB kit at 3200 MHz with a CL timing of 16. Having a low CL timing is just as important as having a higher frequency RAM for Ryzen systems. I had to make a choice between having higher frequency but a higher CL timing or lower frequency with a lower CL timing. And I decided to meet in the middle with the T-Force Vulcans. They were actually one of the better options out there for the price. Just make sure to enable XMP through the BIOS so that your RAM is running at its full speed. It's really easy to do. Just enter BIOS by pressing the delete key on your keyboard and enable the XMP profile. You can also manually set the frequency to match the speed of your RAM. Now for the GPU. The RTX 3070 was the best choice for this price bracket because it starts at $499 and it's said to deliver better performance than the 2080 Ti, which we will confirm in the benchmark segment of this video. I personally went with the Asus TUF series specifically because these have proven to be one of the better 30 series cards on launch, and their TUF series have improved in terms of noise levels, thermals, and performance over their last gen TUF series. I actually did a build using the Asus TUF RTX 3080 not too long ago, and I was very impressed with the results. For storage, I was able to squeeze in a 512GB SSD from Team Group. Storage is obviously optional and subjective, so you guys can add as much storage as you want. But for this build, 512GB is a great starting point. Powering the entire build is a 700-watt bronze certified power supply from EVGA, which I got for a pretty good deal. However, you don't need 700 watts for this build. A 600 watt or even a 550 watt power supply would be sufficient enough to power the build, but since we are future-proofing the PC, I thought I would go with some extra wattage to cover any future upgrades. One thing to note here is that the EVGA power supply I'm using only comes with a single 8-pin EPC connector, but the motherboard has an extra 4-pin EPC socket, so if you're planning on using a power-hungry CPU for serious overclocking, then I recommend buying a power supply that provides you with 2 8-pin EPC connectors instead of 1. The 8-pin provides up to 235 watts of power, and the extra 4-pin provides up to 155 watts. For this build and any future upgrades I plan on doing, a single 8-pin is more than plenty, but I'll drop a link to a power supply that has both 8 pins if you're interested. And finally, the case we're going with is the new Corsair 4000D Airflow. I didn't want to cheap out on the case this time and go with something that actually looks good and has plenty of space for upgradability. The 4000D pretty much checked all the boxes. We got a nice looking full ATX case with a tempered glass side panel and 2 USB ports on the front panel, one of which is a USB Type-C. So this is the airflow version of the 4000D, which means it has these triangular cutouts in the front for better airflow, and it does come with 2 120mm fans pre-installed. I also like the cable management support they included in the back of the case. We got a few Velcro straps and a raceway to tidy everything up. There is one thing I want to nitpick about this case, and it's probably the dumbest thing I've mentioned on this channel, but I can't let it go. It has to do with these lime green accents everywhere. Like, why Corsair? Like, no one is going to be building a black and lime green themed PC. Maybe 0.01% of the people watching this video. And I know 99% of you guys watching don't give 2 cents about it, but it just doesn't make sense adding these accent colors that don't go with anything. At least give us the option to remove it if we want, right? Like, I don't know why it bothers me this much. I'm sorry guys for ranting, but it just does. Like, we got this tab over here baked onto the dust filter. We got some accents around the thumb screws and even some accents on the USB port. I give up. Aside from that little small thing, you know, I think it's a solid case for $80. So yeah, that is the end of the rant. Thank you guys for tuning in. These are all the parts I'll be using for the build. So let's go ahead and put them together and see what this baby can do.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
So the build turned out really great, you guys. I didn't run into any issues whatsoever building inside the 4000D airflow. I absolutely love the cable management support in the back. The raceway and the built-in Velcro straps helped me a lot in tightening up the wires. I was also impressed with the overall thermals of the build. As you guys saw in the gameplay footage, both CPU and GPU stayed very cool while remaining absolutely silent. Even with the side panel off, I can hardly hear anything, and it's currently running the Heaven benchmark as we speak. And that's a good thing. That means we don't have to add any extra fans to the case, which, we can save money there. But the option is definitely there if you do want to add some, or maybe even throw in some RGB fans if you want. I would say this build is the perfect starting point. It's got such a great upgrade path and room for expandability that you guys can do literally anything you want to it. You can upgrade to the new AMD Zen 3 processor, upgrade your graphics card, slap on a beefier CPU cooler. You can even add more RAM and fans. Hell, you could even do a custom loop inside here. The 4000D will have you covered. So as you guys saw in the gameplay footage, the RTX 3070 is a little overkill for 1080p gaming. Buttery smooth gameplay, while in some games we're pushing over 200 FPS. So I thought I would benchmark the 3070 and compare it to the other RTX cards to see how it stacks up. Alright, so in order for these benchmarks to be fair, I used the same test bench for all the cards. So I took the 3070 out of this build and I plugged it into the other rig for a more accurate comparison. Starting off with Time Spy, we can see some exciting and disappointing numbers at the same time. I mean, sure, the RTX 3070 is pretty much neck and neck with the 2080 Ti across all the resolutions, but it didn't quite live up to Nvidia's claims being much faster. I was expecting at least a 10% increase in performance, but at the same time, we are talking about a $500 starting price of a card that is going up against a $1,200, or used to be a $1,200 card. So it really depends on how you look at it. Moving on to the Heaven benchmark, we can see a much clearer idea of how these cards compare. The RTX 3070 just underperforming the 2080 Ti in 1080p. However, that gap narrows as the resolution gets higher. Rainbow Six Siege shows a slightly different result, with the 3070 being slightly faster than the 2080 Ti across 1080p and 1440p, however it falls short in 4K. We can also see some obvious CPU bottlenecking in 1080p, which is to be expected. Moving on to more of a demanding title like Ghost Recon Wildlands, we can see much of the same story. The higher the resolution, the marginal the gains between the 3070 and 2080 Ti. The Division also has similar results, with both the 3070 and the 2080 Ti practically neck and neck across all the resolutions. The title that the 2080 Ti did a lot better in compared to the 3070 was Red Dead 2. We can see a 19 FPS lead in 1080p from the 2080 Ti, 13 frames in 1440p, and 8 frames in 4K. Taking a look at the total frames across 6 of the titles benchmarked, we can see the 2080 Ti is only 2% faster than the RTX 3070 in 1080p titles, which can very well be in the margin of error. The RTX 2080 Ti is also 1% faster in 1440p and 3% faster in 4K. All these numbers are less than 5%, which means it's within the margin of error and it's negligible. But when you look at performance per dollar, it shows the bigger picture. It's no surprise that the RTX 3070 gives you the most bang for the buck with $2.60 per frame compared to the RTX 2080 Ti and the RTX 3080 for 1080p gaming. And it even has the best value for 1440p gaming as well. But let's be realistic here. No one's going to be paying $1,200 for an RTX 2080 Ti, so comparing it to the MSRP price is kind of stupid. The cheapest price for a 2080 Ti right now goes for about $800 in my area. So I decided to add that into the mix, and we can still see that the RTX 3070 is the value king, at least for 1080 and 1440p gaming. But let's say hypothetically that the prices of the 2080 Ti will drop even more once the 3070s are available for purchase. Well, it's not really hypothetical. I'm pretty sure the prices are going to drop anyways. Let's say the RTX 2080 Ti will sell for around $600. That brings the value of the 2080 Ti much closer to the RTX 3070, which means that no one should be spending more than $600 on a 2080 Ti if they can buy a 3070 for around the same price. So I can't really say that I'm disappointed. I mean, sure, the RTX 3070 didn't slap around the 2080 Ti like Nvidia hyped us about, but when you look at the bigger picture, you are getting 2080 Ti performance at around $500, which is nuts. This is definitely something to get excited about, you guys. The ball is officially in AMD's court. Are they going to have an answer to Nvidia's Ampere cards, or are they going to let Nvidia dunk over them once again? If AMD doesn't have an answer or competitor to the RTX 3070, then I got a feeling that this card is going to dominate the market. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about all of this. Are you upset because the card didn't live up to Nvidia's hype, or are you excited because of the amount of performance you're going to get for around $500? Either way, if you guys enjoyed the video or found it helpful, consider dropping a like before you head out, as it does help out a ton. I'll drop a link to all the parts I used in the build down below also if you guys want to check it out. And if you're new here, consider subscribing because I have a bunch of PC builds coming up, a lot more budget builds as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.